Okay, in this video we're going to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. First thing that we have to do, we have to make sure that the equation is set up to use the quadratic formula, which means that the equation has to be set equal to 0. So I get all my variables, constant, everything on one side of the equation. Then I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. So I'm going to see my A is in front of my squared term, my B is in front of my X term, and then my C is my constant. So we're going to identify what those three terms are, and then we'll plug directly into our formula. So looking at the formula, remember that it is opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C. All of that is divided by 2 times A. So let's look at an example real quick. So let's say, for example, that we have the equation 3x squared minus 7x equals negative 2. The first thing that we want to do is we want to set this equation equal to 0. So I need to move this 2 to the other side. So my real equation will be 3x squared minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. Once I'm at this point, then I can identify what is my A. Remember, it's the term in front of the squared. What is my B? The term in front of my X. And what is my C? Which is just the constant. Once I have these three things identified, then I'm going to go plug into my formula. So remember, using the formula up there, we have X equals the opposite of B. So I'm going to use positive 7. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, so negative 7 squared. Notice that I put that in parentheses because what I really want to do is I want to square the negative 7. If I don't use parentheses sometimes, especially if I'm using a calculator, it will accidentally say 7 squared and then put a negative on it. That is not what I want to do. So I want to take the entire negative 7 and square it. Then I'm going to have minus 4 times my A, which is 3, times my C, which is 2. All of that gets divided by 2 times A, which is 3. So once I've got it plugged into my formula, I'm going to kind of work from the inside out. So I'm going to simplify what's underneath that what's underneath that square root. So I'm going to have 7 plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 3 times 2 is going to be 24. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. I'm going to keep simplifying it. So 49 minus 24 is going to be 25. And some of you might be able to skip some of these steps. I'm just trying to show you each step so you can kind of follow along. So at this point, I see 7 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 6. Now, that square root is what I need to continue to simplify. We're going to have two options here. One, it's either going to be a perfect square, which is perfect. So then I'm going to go ahead and simplify them, separating them and finding two real solutions. Or it might still remain a square root. So we'll see one of those examples here in a minute. Conveniently, 25 is a perfect square. So really what I want to say is 7 plus 5 divided by 6. And I want to say 7 minus 5 divided by 6. That's going to give me my two solutions. Right? So 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 divided by 6. X is going to equal 2 here. 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 divided by 6. X is going to equal 1/3 here. So now I have my two solutions, X equaling 2 and X equaling 1/3. Okay, so let's try one more example here. We've got 2x squared equals 3x plus 4. Now remember, the first step is to make sure that it's set equal to 0 or it's not ready to use the quadratic formula yet. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and move that 3x over, and I want to move that 4 over. So I've got 2x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now I can go ahead and identify my a, which is 2, my b, which is negative 3, and my c, which is negative 4. Once I've identified my a, b, and c, and I can go ahead and go to my quadratic formula. I'm going to take the opposite of b, which is going to now be a positive 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that's going to be over 2 times a. Remember, I'm going to start simplifying the inside of that square root first. So I'm going to have 3 plus or minus the square root. When I take negative 3 squared, I get 9. When I take negative 4 times 2 times negative 4, I get positive 32. All that's over 4. All right, I'm going to keep simplifying this. So I'm going to end up with 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 divided by 4. Now, one thing that I noticed that is different than last time is that the square root of 41 is not perfect. So I can't just do what we did last time where I take the number, take its square root, and finish solving. Instead, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to find each one and estimate or use my calculator. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to type in my plus, okay? Then what I'll come back and do is type in my minus. So I'm going to do 2 problems here. First one I'm going to do is 3 plus the square root of 41 over 4. And then I'm going to have to do 3 minus the square root of 41 divided by 4. All right. So in your calculator, depending on what kind of a calculator that you're using, you can use your phone calculator, all that, whatever. Just make sure that when you do this, I always want to start with everything in the numerator and then push enter and then divide by 4. So say I was going to be using my phone calculator, because honestly that might be all that we have right now. So what I would do in my phone calculator is I would type in 41. Then I would use my square root of x button. Then I would plus the 3. Then I would divide by 4. And that's going to get me 2.35, right? And of course it keeps going, but we're just going to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, I can do the same thing with my next one. I'm going to do 41 square root of x. Then I'm going to use the little plus minus button, which would make it turn into a negative, right? That's what I want to see here. Then I'm still going to be adding a 3 because it's a positive 3. Then I'm going to divide by my 4. And I would get negative 0.85. Again, I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so if I'm using a regular calculator, right, I could type it all in the way I wanted, but I just wanted to show you that if all you have right now is your phone calculator, I can still do these same problems, okay? So whatever calculator that you are using, try typing it in and getting these 2 solutions. So say, for example, we wanted to determine how many solutions that there could possibly be, but we didn't want to have to do all of the work. Well, what we could do is we could use part of the formula, not the whole formula, but part of it, and find what we call the discriminant. So the discriminant is just the part that is underneath our square root, not the square root, but what's underneath. So it is mainly that b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so we've really got 3 scenarios that we're going to use the discriminant for. The first scenario is when I calculate that discriminant, is it greater than 0? So if it is greater than 0, so a positive number, okay, then I would say that there are 2 real solutions. If it is equal to 0, then there's 1 real solution. And if it is less than or a negative number, then I would say that there are no real solutions. So let's see if we can describe the solutions using that discriminant. So we don't want to do all of the work, just a little part of it. So looking at our first example, when we are doing the discriminant or the full formula, the first thing that we have to do is make sure that it's written in a form where I can find the A, the B, and the C, which means it's got to be set equal to 0. So this first one is set equal to 0. So I'm going to find the A, which is 5, the B, which is -2, and the C, which is 4. So now I'm going to do just the discriminant. So to find that, I'm going to do B squared minus 4 times A times C. All right. Remember that when we are doing this, we want to square the B term. So that -2 actually is going to go in parentheses because what I want to say is -2 times -2. Okay, be careful about this if you're just using your calculator, that it's giving you a positive number when you square it, right? So -2 times -2 is going to give me 4 minus 5 times 4 is 20. 20 times 4 is 80. So I get 4 minus 80, I get a -76. So since the discriminant is negative, then I'm going to say there is going to be no real solutions. Okay. All right, let's try another one. So remember what we want to do. We want to make sure that it is set ready for the formula, which means it needs to be in standard form and that it's solved for 0. So the first thing I'm actually going to have to do here is get rid of that 1. So the first thing I want to do is I want to move that 1 to the other side. So I'm going to have x squared plus 7x minus 1 equals 0. Now I can come up with my A, which is a 1, right? If there's nothing in front, we know it's a 1. My B, which is 7, and my C, which is -1. All right? So I'm going to say B squared minus 4 times A times C. So I'm going to have 49. -4 times 1 times -1 is going to give me +4. So I'm going to get 53. So since 53 is positive, I'm going to say that there would be 2 real solutions. All right, since that 53 was positive. All right, let's try our last one. Just make sure that we've got it all done here. Make sure that it's set equal to 0, which it is. I'm going to find my A, which is -2, my B, which is 4, and my C, which is -3. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my formula here. So I'm going to have 4 squared minus 4 times -2 times -3. So 4 squared is going to give me 16. -4 times -2 is +8. +8 times -3 is -24. So here I'm going to get -8, which means since I have a negative, I would get no real solutions. All right, so now we can see how to find the quadratic formula itself. First, I set it equal to 0. I identify the A, the B, the C. I plug it into the formula. If it's a perfect square, come up with the answers. If it's not, I need to go type into my calculator. I can also find how many possible solutions there would be by using just the discriminant. Remember, that's going to be the value that's underneath the square root. I'm going to have 3 cases. That number could be positive, meaning that it's greater than 0. It could be equal to 0, or it could be less than or negative. Okay, in those scenarios, I need to remember what type of solutions I would get. Are there 2 real, 1 real, or no real solution?